I don't have the... You had it too far. Hey, if I can't tell a short joke, who could? One of those things. Okay, why do you participate in the Solar Car Challenge? Well, you're going to find it develops teamwork, problem solving, something that I really strongly believe in, the don't quit idea. One of the things that life teaches us is we're going to have successes and failures, but when you have a failure, you don't quit. You find a way to make it work. You try to find a solution to it. So I tell all the advisors at the beginning, let your philosophy be that we're not 3 weeks before the race going to pull out because we didn't receive something or we still have too much work to be done. It can be done. And the experience your team has is huge. I remember a time we were 3 weeks away from sending our solar car by plane to Australia to race the World Solar Challenge. We got out there and we found this new array, which we had this stupid idea that we could build ourselves. It didn't work. So we had to take paint knives and scrape off all these solar cells and try to rebuild a solar panel of this. I had to talk to every teacher in school to let the kids out so they could work on it, not only during their classes, but also after school and weekend and at night. And people were putting in 17-hour days on doing this. We finally got it ready. We got on the boat, went over there, and the shipment was damaged when the box fell on top of the array and killed it. And we had only 1 day of racing the World Solar Car Challenge that first time. But we did have 10 days of sightseeing in Australia, and that ain't bad. It's wonderful. So don't quit. You find a solution. Our plan for this year, our dates are pretty well set out. We have our special workshop in January. We hope you'll file your intent to race by January 31st. It's a deadline for that. And that doesn't mean that you're committing to race. It says we're interested, and therefore we start sending you information. You get put on the pipeline of what's going on. Registration deadline is March 1st. Team check-in on the 12th. Everybody who's going to be taking part in your race must be there that day. Now, well, we're going to fly them in. They need to be there on that first day because that night we have an all-teams meeting that is crucial. Scrutineering 13 through 15 over the Speedway. Race begins in Fort Worth on the 16th and we arrive in Palmdale on the 23rd. Let me talk to you about scrutineering. Scrutineering is a huge thing. We've got some information on our YouTube channel. Dr. Dragoo talks about his experience on there. First time he went through scrutineering. How sometimes you don't pass and it becomes a learning experience. On our webpage, we have a copy of the booklet of questions we're going to ask you. These questions should be done in advance so that your team knows what's going to answer they want to give and that you're totally ready to succeed through scrutineering. We want you to be a success, but you need to be a success on all the stations, and there are 7 stations this year. You're looking at yourself, if you're an old-time solar car person, and you say, 7, we've always had 6. 7th station we use on cross-country, where we take a large truck and drive it by your car and make sure that the vortices of the truck going by you do not upset the car and its progress down the road. We want to make sure you're stable. So that's a huge thing. So look at your scrutineering. We provide you the questions. You just have to have your answers. When you're doing scrutineering, you don't have an advisor with you. It's totally students there. So you really need to know your stuff. We have a requirement to make this a true academic program, something to support what we do. And that is an oral presentation. You have up to 8 minutes to tell us about your project, such as who you are. Everybody on your team needs to take part in this, not just standing there and one person talking. Everybody needs to do something. You need to tell us your engineering decisions, why you did this. You need to have your presentation without notes, you use visual aids, you can actually have your car there talking about it. And what's at stake is 20 miles. You can earn up to 20 miles, we call it forever miles, because once you qualify for scrutineering, you always have those miles. Why do we do that? We had a team that had so many penalties that they didn't have any successful miles they could take home and show sponsors. But if you've got these 20 forever miles, then you're okay. Hey team, just coming in, we've got some seats up here, and if you take these seats, you get a free t-shirt. So there's sort of an incentive. Where are y'all from?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, science school there.
Yes, the school.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. And this is what your oral presentation really should look like. You should stand up your team and have a camera taking a picture of the presentation. We don't want fancy footwork with your videos. We don't want cuts. We want to have it as if you were standing there in front of judges, actually talking as a group. Now, this is originally how we had the oral presentations. But because of COVID, and because of time and stress during scrutineering, it's sort of neat to have you prepare a video of it, because I can watch it over and over and over again. And I get a chance to find out more about your team members before I actually get a chance to meet them. So this is what it should sort of look like. Interesting things that are new in 2023. And by the way, these PowerPoints will be available on our webpage shortly after the event's over with, just to let you know. You know, we've got a new cruiser division. We actually had a cruiser take part in this. We had 3 registered last year, and it's a new division, things are tough. I'm hoping we can have a cruiser go cross country. What an experience that would be. We've got some mechanical changes I'll be talking about more. We've now, instead of a roll cage, we call it a safety cell. It's a different philosophy. We're enlarging the capabilities of Classic, Advanced Classic, and your electric solar powered, so that you have a choice now. Lithium iron phosphate batteries come now relatively inexpensively, and they come with built-in power management systems. So we're making that available to you if you're in Classic, Advanced Classic, or electric. You can still use lead acid if you want to, but as we go cross country using the lithium iron phosphate technology, you cut your weight of your batteries in half, maybe more. So that's sort of an important thing to think about. We've also said if you're in those divisions, you can use solar cells or solar panels that have efficiency up to 22%. That's an enlargement in the past. And now your battery capacity can be 5.25 kilowatt hours. You've got the cruiser, it can be 10 kilowatt hours. So you've got more opportunity there to store up what you're doing. This is what it's sort of going to look like. And it's interesting, you notice every solar car team has a 4-car strategy here. Got to get out my best laser pointer here. Your lead car has a yellow light on it. It needs to be substantial, not something you find at Costco. You want something that's going to be identifiable. You can have some distance here so that if a car is passing you from behind, they can pass in front here and move on. You've got your solar car, your first chase car, and your second chase vehicle. Now, sometimes you're going to want a little distance in here, that's okay. But these cars have to stay together as a tag team, because this car protects the rear end of your solar car. You don't want somebody getting in between there. What's our philosophy? We're sort of different. We're not a competition. We're a cooperation. And the reason we say this is, hi guys, glad to have you up here. There are about 100 schools that start this out at the beginning of each year. We'll have about 45 file an intent to race. We'll have about 30 file registrations, and then we're expecting maybe 25 to go cross country with us. So if you make it that 25, and you pass scrutineering, you are a winner. Look at what you've done. You've accomplished such a huge amount just to be there. So if you are there, one of your responsibilities is not to say, well, I'm going to beat them or I'm going to beat them. It's about cooperating with other people. One thing that makes teams successful is, oh my gosh, we forgot this wrench. Or I don't have this nut and bolt here. Where can I find it? We're out at the speedway, or we're on the track. Where can I find this? You go to another team and say, hey, do you happen to have a wrench? They'll share it with you. We've had people who lost devices like a motor controller, and I know Prosper brought up a motor controller and loaned it to another team. You can do that because we care about each other. We are a cooperation once we get there. The best example I know was a braking test, where we take your car and you say, drive as fast as you can, slam on the brakes, and see if you can handle that. Well, they slammed on the brakes, the weld on the brake didn't work, and actually caused an accident to brake. Before their team could get there, there were 3 other teams there. One a welder from the Mississippi team, 2 other teams, all trying to get that car back into condition again. That's who we are. So we believe in good sportsmanship. Yeah, we give trophies. Yeah, there's different plaques and all that kind of thing. We need that. You need that for sponsorship. You need that to take to somebody and say, look at what we've got. But what it really means is you develop yourself as a community. And I promise you, if you go on the race this year, even though you start off as individual teams, when you get to the end of this, you're going to be sort of a family. Am I right? For those who've done this before, you're sort of a community. So where do we start? You start with team building. This is huge. I cannot tell you how important it is. Yeah, you can say, well, we'll be meeting in class, we'll be doing this, but you've got to build a relationship between your kids, that they'll be able to get along with each other. Because I promise you, the last 2 or 3 weeks before the race, you'll want to kill each other. I see it all the time with my own teams. I had to watch it because if somebody didn't do something or somebody was doing something dumb, one of the older members of the team would throw a screwdriver at them or something like that. So you build some good times, you bond, so that when you're doing your race or you're in those last weeks, you've got something that is cohesive. The good times overcome the bad times. One of the things we always did was we always had a weekend session. I never wanted to meet on Sundays, but that's when the kids wanted to meet rather than Saturdays. I said, why don't you want to meet on Saturdays? Well, we've got our girlfriends or boyfriends, and we want to go out on a date, so we'll do it on Sundays. Now, one of those things. But we would always, at the end of the day, we'd sit down for a dinner together. We'd have a large table, we'd sit down, and if you had a gripe, you shared that gripe. Or you threw a piece of pizza at someone. Better that than a wrench. And you aired your feelings. During the course of the year, I took my team out to Big Bend or to McDonald Observatory, or we did a camp out. Or one day we had a food fight day where we would throw food at each other. Just to relieve tension of this. You need to do that. Those good times build friendships. And don't just say, well, we're in the same class and we're friends. You need a time as a team to bond. So take the time to do that. How many people should you have on your team? No less than 6 and 2 drivers. Here's a team from Capel, a team from Michigan, Sun Devils. Here's an old Winston team, and if you notice, there's an old guy right there who had hair. So, how many people did you have to have? You had to have enough to be able to get the car to put it on a truck to transport it in Australia. You need enough. So that's hugely important. You need to develop the role of your team captain. Your team captain is there to help you as an advisor. If you've got people come to school and they want to see your project, you may not be able to get your whole team together, but you can go find out where your team captain is, pull them out, and y'all two talk. They don't want to talk to an old person. They want to talk to a kid, a young man, a young lady who's team captain. So your team captain plays an important role. Also, while your back is turned this way, there's someone watching the other way, so that you can make sure that people are not doing inappropriate things that are going to hurt themselves with the batteries, things along that line. Team captains are important. And that's developed during the course of the year. Some people will have co-captains. Whatever works for you, but team captains are great. Everybody who's here for their interns are team captains. By the way, if you can hear me outside,
yeah, they can hear us.
That's pretty good. One time we had a session when there was a church here, and I was saying to myself, I turned to the group and I said, we've got something very important to say to you. And I finished that, I was waving my hand, and from the room next door it says, hallelujah. And I said, God's on my side on this one. Triton, are you out there and out there? Thank you. Y'all need to come up here. One of the things that we have as our highest order of excellence is something we call the Order of the Solar Cells. These are people who were captains on teams. These are people who've come back as interns. Liam, you want to come over here?
Yeah, you have the time.
What I'm doing is showing you that there's life after high school in solar. You can come back as an intern. So I'm presenting you the Order of the Solar Cell, and it says here, presented to those extremely special people who believe in high school solar car racing and the great students who make it happen. These are paid internships. A lot of people have another way that we're different from regular events. If you serve as an intern, let's say in Encore, where you go there to learn what's going on. That's not us. We have interns because we learn from our interns. They teach us because they're our closest connection with the solar cars. We find out how you cheat on us. And you say, don't y'all cheat? Yes, you do. Absolutely. One of the things you have to be able to do is make a turn within a 15-meter radius. Very important. But we found out from one of our interns that a team, past team, not functioning anymore, would have their kids go talk to the judge while one member of the team would unscrew one bolt and tighten another and make a turn to the right. They pass that. Then those same group of kids would run up and talk to the judge and surround him with questions while the other kid went back and loosened the tightened bolt and tightened the loosened bolt, and they could turn the other way. Now, that's initiative. That's what I'm talking about. Those kids are probably CEOs of corporations right now because they found out what was going on. But that was incredible. So, neat stuff there. You want to make sure your team is vested in this project. You can work it many different ways. I know there was one group that between the sponsor, the advisor, and the team, they had a contract that said this is what you're going to guarantee to do. But what I recommend for every new team, get together one evening between your team, your advisor, maybe an administrator, and your parents. And let everybody be on the same page. Let your parents know they can form a boosters club to help you, to help support you, raise money, provide food, help you when you come home crying because something didn't work out. You do that, and that way when you have a race during the summer, you don't get parents saying, well, we can't bring our kid because we're planning a trip to Colorado during that time. They need to know that the race takes part in July and that the kid's got to be there. So get your kids vested in it. And one way to vest is have your team raise money for your project. It's huge. If you put your effort into raising money, you're going to be far more careful with that tool or that solar cell or whatever you got because you helped raise it. When you're making design decisions and you try and decide, should I spend this or that, if you've helped raise it, then raise the money for it, you're more valuable. Example, I had a team that wanted to use very fancy mountain bike brakes. We could. The whole car, including the battery, was going to weigh under 400 pounds. Mountain bike brakes would have worked. Mountain bike brakes were like, for the ones we wanted, would be like $600 a pair. We would have had to spend $2,400 on them. So where are we going to get the money? It wasn't in our budget. We got the great idea we're going to go to the State Fair of Texas. And an old famous solar car fundraiser is sell a solar cell. You get people to donate $10 and supposedly you put their name on the solar car and they have bought one of your solar cells. And so we went there, and the first day we raised $90. The second day, $110. We were there 20 days with our solar car, and we only raised $1,100, 20 days of an investment for $2,400 that we wanted to spend. That helped us make a better decision. Now, we raised the money eventually, but you need to be involved in the fundraising because it helps you, it connects you with that car. Only time I ever had a car that didn't function, that didn't have people there, was a team out of San Antonio. It's a private school there, and the school paid for the car. When the summer came along, the kids didn't come out, and they told me, it's not our car, we didn't pay for it. People need to be involved in this. Take your kids on trips, bring them to the workshops, the January workshop or specialty workshops. I think that Mr. Roseberry with the Wiley East team is going to talk about a welding workshop that he wants to put on. Take part in that. Read the rules together. Read the rules much and often. Have rules in your shop where you're working. You can't read it through all one day. You'll kill yourself. You'll throw up because it's too much there. Read section. Take a week. We're going to read this section and this section Monday, and this section Tuesday, or whatever. But you need to know what's in there. I had a student write me and say, which rules are you in your force? All the rules are there because they're important. They're designed to keep you safe. Here's another picture of our team doing fundraising and skill building. One of the things that colleges have as an advantage is that most of their participants know what they're doing. But many people come into solar car, and my original team, they almost didn't know how to turn a screwdriver. I had a little project, 6 people watching one guy turn the screwdriver. That's not really efficient. Tried to start a team out in San Diego. The sponsor of the San Diego State Solar Car team said that he would sponsor this high school. So he went there and he told his high school what they needed, and they were just standing around there. And he calls me on the phone and he's screaming at me. And he said, why did you get me to be a sponsor of this team? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I went to my San Diego State college team, and I said, we're going to do this and this and have the car ready in 6 months. And he said, I did the same thing with the high school. And they just stood there. And I said, well, why did they stand there? And they said, they didn't know how to measure. They didn't know how to cut. They didn't know how to design. They didn't have CAD experiences. And that's part of the process. You're learning these skills. So you've got to find ways to develop those skills. And the importance, maybe more than anything, is have visual goal setting. Here's sort of my standard idea, that during September, that's your planning and design time. You develop promotional materials in October. And promotional materials partly is you. Can you stand up and talk about what you're wanting to do? If you've got an existing car, have pictures that you can go take, or take your car somewhere and show it to somebody for sponsorship. Then, fundraising in October, buy what you need to buy in November, because as somebody said to me, their motor controller came in just now, and it was ordered. Wasn't that you, Brandon, said it just came in like 6 months after you ordered it?
10 months.
So this, you've got to realize that one of the skills you're learning here is called materials technology. Know what you need, when you need it, and know when you have to order it to get it here. And with all the supply line issues, things are even more difficult. So that's a good time to buy your stuff in November. You know what you're going to do because you set up a plan for it. Build in December to March. Things don't work, so give yourself a little re-engineering, and then test. June, end of May, June, should be testing on a car. Don't come here unless you put 500 miles on that car. Don't waste our time to come here and have your car just break. During the last race before that, the teams that had not taken their car out and put real miles on their car didn't pass scrutineering. But more than anything else, you want that car to break when you can only see it. You don't want everybody else to see it. You want it to break in your parking lot, not out on the road. So Watch out for that kind of thing. Set up a timeline. We built a thing on the wall where we had everything spread out. Here's our goals, and under each goal we had sub-goals, and then we had who was going to carry out those goals. And there was something mental about this to be able to just check it off or scratch it through. It showed progress. And that way you didn't forget anything. It's like, oh, gee, you should have ordered this back in such and such. Well, you don't because you planned for it. Planning is crucial. When you go out in life, whatever kind of job you're going to get, I promise you, planning ahead is going to help you. Importance of testing is so important. Charlene, this will look familiar to you. This is the Winston parking lot here as we're driving around and around and around and around in there. Recommendations. And then after the race is over with, y'all go off on a group together. Mend yourself for the next year. You want to make sure that you get a chance to evaluate what worked and what didn't work. And what did work, write it down. What didn't work, write it down so that new people will have your experience. One of the things I learned the hard way, my first team, were all seniors except one junior. They graduated. All that learning was gone. So we decided you need to have some seniors, some juniors, some sophomores, some freshmen, so that they can pass on. The best teachers, not me, it's one student to another student. And that way when they graduate, you haven't lost everything. So please think about that, advisors. That's important. That saves your life more than you can imagine. And I think that's where we are at the end of that one when you put on cross country. Cross country is intriguing now. I'm giving you a skim off the top with cross country. We'll be putting out full details for this in January, but I'm redriving the race course in about 30 days, setting up arrangements with hotels so that you can get group rates, setting up events along the way. For instance, we have some Harmony schools who are here. I want you to realize that our host, when we get to El Paso, is the Harmony schools there. We're actually going to be on one of their campuses and being able to bring in community that way. So we appreciate the support from our Harmony districts who take part in this. When we're talking about a cross country, you're talking about putting together a more expensive fundraising project because it's longer. You've got 3 days racing, a rest day in El Paso, and then 4 days before you get to Palmdale. And then you've got to get back. You've got to have a trailer. You've got to be thinking about hotel and motel rates, whatever. In the evening, we try to provide you with a meal wherever you are. Because when we do that, then it means a community comes out and prepares that meal for us, and you don't have to pay the cost on it. That's hugely important with team building. But look at some of the things you need to think about when you do a cross country. You're all an ambassador to the race. You're all supporting this thing. That's important. You want to take time to visit with people who are curious about your car. I recommend that on your team you designate somebody as an information officer, who when you see somebody coming to your car, they go off and intercept that person. Now, why do I say that? You'll be on the side of the road with the tire blown out, and there'll be 4 or 5 cars stopped, and people getting out of the car to come over and talk to you at the least appropriate time. You're sitting there cussing and kicking your wheel in the car and trying to carry on and replacing it, and here's somebody saying, well, hey, where do you put the gas in this car? And you want to stand up and slap their goodness out. You know, so have somebody who can intercept and say, hey, we're so going to have something to hand to them and say, we're doing this, we're on a race between Fort Worth or whatever, and thank you for your interest, and we love having you, and all that kind of thing. But that public information officer will help you. When you do a cross-country race, you start off on that first day of the race at 9 o'clock and you have a judge assigned. That judge is assigned to you until 9 o'clock and the car is impounded. Once it's impounded, the car belongs to the race, not you at 9 o'clock, at 9 each night. Then you can get your car back at 6:30. That way we ensure You go home and get some rest, and that your cars are safe. We provide police coverage overnight. The judge who's with you each day needs to be talked to, needs to be shared with. So you want to develop some kind of liaison with them, someone who can share communication between the judge and staff and your team. Don't have to have the judge talk to 5 people on the team. Just have somebody who's going to represent the team. Keep your judge informed of what you do. Better to ask rather than do something unwise. You want to be on time for the race meetings. Every morning at 8 o'clock, we have a team meeting where all the teams get together and we talk about, here's what happened the day before. We give day trophies and we say, here's what you have to watch out for today. Here's what the weather looks like. It's extremely important. Be on time for that or you get penalized. Be ready to line up your car on time. Be on time for meals. The race starts at 9 o'clock. It ends wherever you are at 5 o'clock. We hope you're at the end of the race day at 5 o'clock, but if you're not, you have to pick up your car, put it on a trailer, and you drive like goodness to get to the end of the race. Because between 7 and 7:30, meals are being provided to you, saving you money. And if you're there after that, you have to buy your own meals. But more importantly, that's where the community will be coming out to see you. That's a huge thing to look forward to. Here's one of our team meetings, and here's something that you're going to look forward to. This was a group of Rotarians in Ponca City on a race as we're going to Minneapolis who got out there and cooked barbecue for everybody. That's a big job when you're talking about 300, 350 people. That's a lot of barbecue. So these communities need to know that you are going to be there to eat it and that you don't show up and ask 2 hours later, well, where's my dinner? We'll show you what the paper plates were. Be careful about what you say. One of the things you're going to find, you're going to be tired, you're going to be angry, you're going to be happy. You go into a community that may or may not have the kind of facilities or setup that you think might be appropriate. Be careful about what you say because people listen to them and they judge you and the race by what they overhear. Case in point, we were doing a race down to Austin and we were in a small town, county seat, and this team was bad-mouthing the town and saying what a poor county courthouse they had. They didn't realize that the county judge was standing behind them. Next day in the newspaper in that small town that went to Waco and several other places was, team from such and such says that we have a lousy courthouse and they may not be welcome to our community again. They named the team. You don't want to have that happen. So, save your mouthing to when you get back into the hotel and all that kind of stuff. Don't say it out in public because people listen to what you have to say. When you have stops along the race, out in your where to be, what to do, and in your racing booklet, we'll provide you a booklet that sets out almost a mile-by-mile description of the whole race course, probably about 50 pages. And on it tells you when you get to Hillsboro, there'll be a media stop or just a rest stop. And you have to stop there for 15 minutes. You have to make the stop. That's where we have community going to come out to see you. We say that between 9:30 and 10:30 we expect cars to come through. If your car is drivable, you need to drive it into those stops. Because whether it's a media stop or a rest stop or a lunch stop, people want to see a driving car. Don't bring your car in on a trailer because you're charging it. You don't want to drive. You get those miles driving up to that rest stop, but it makes an impression on the community. If you're driving on a trailer and you just didn't put your best foot forward. Here's one of those rest stops. We're in Hillsboro. When you're passing another solo car, you do it with care. If you're going to pass, the judge in your car needs to notify the judge in the team you're passing that you intend to pass. And they do that by flashing lights. And then you carefully pass. And that's an important thing. Be careful about that. As you go by, remember good sportsmanship. People lost their entire mileage one day because one kid, when they were passing another car, showed the sign of the Great American Eagle. I have too many fingers up here. But that's not what you do. You know, you support each other, not say, well, hey, we're driving faster than you. Your primary chase vehicle must always stay with your solar car. That is crucial. That's an accident. Why? Because that primary chase car houses a judge. The passenger in the front seat is the judge. Maybe your advisor's driving the car, but the judge is there so he can have, or she can have eye to eye between the chase vehicle and the solar car so that you can make sure everything's going okay. And by being close enough to your solar car, you make sure that nobody who's passing gets between you and that solar car. Why do you do this? Because when you go through a community, you as a little group need to go into group. You need to go through the solar, let's say you've got a red light coming up where you stop. If the light's green and you think it's going to turn yellow, well then slow down as if you're not going to go through. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to stay up, first chase car, and stay up with your solar car. Your lead car can go ahead. Your second chase car, which many times is your trailer, can be behind. That's okay. That works. But you need to be thinking about that. By the camera, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to have you make a presentation after this gives me a better rest out here. So stay close so you can monitor what's going on at those intersections. Your first chase car and your second chase car, we're going to have specialized lights. Each one of them, 4 of them on each car, will surround a sign. And you saw out there it says, "Caution, solar car ahead." That's going to be on each one of your chase car vehicles. We do this so that with these specialized lights, which you have to buy, and they're not cheap, they can provide you the kind of protection from people who are coming from behind. We have 2 vehicles designed to insulate your solar car from people who are coming up from behind you. Your first car, your trailer, gives a first warning. You've got lights that you can see for half a mile. You've got this big sign. Then you have your first chase car that's right behind your solar car. It's got the same lights and it's got the same sign, or a little bit smaller. But that's designed to protect you. Student conduct during the course of the event is just not included during the race. What goes on at the hotel also reflects upon you. And you say, well, how can that be? It's called closed circuit TV. We had a manager call me to come look at closed circuit TV because a particular team's boys were visiting a particular team's girls in the middle of the night in a different room. We had that on closed circuit TV. No, that's not right. You don't go to a hotel or motel and you flush a towel down the toilet. You don't do that. Those kind of things will have an impact upon you. So your conduct is important. Good sportsmanship, good conduct. Safety issues. Realize onlookers and drivers and media can drive unsafely. They do. They're our paparazzi. They will pull up next to your solar car and somebody will dangle themselves out of a window to try to get a picture of you. You've got to drive defensively so one, they don't get behind your solar car, and that you don't get spooked by these people doing strange, unusual things. That's why we talk about the solar car and the lead car need to be working as an operation. This is a pretty good idea of how things should look. And as I said from before, keep this area close in here. You can have greater distance here, but this is okay here too. Here's what the convoy looks like from behind. You see the caution solar car head. You can't see it really good here from these, but you've got major lights that are on each one of these vehicles here. And this is the way things look. This is a good solar car road. I like it because it's 2-lane and you've got good shoulders. Many states allow you to actually drive on the shoulders. If you have 4 or 5 cars built up behind you, you really need to pull over and let them get by you, otherwise people get tacky. We found that to be particularly true in Nebraska. I don't know why, but it was an interesting experience. Monitor your solar car driver. All race participants must wear hats when in the sun. The driver has to have a hat when he's in the car. This is sort of a tough thing. The ultimate authority for your team always rests with your team advisor. We know that. But when your judge asks you to do something on the basis of safety, we ask you to go along and accept that. You can always complain to me. You can always file a protest. You can always call me. But they're doing it with the best interests of you and what they hope will be the best. Don't remove your stolen car from an impound without a judge. If you have your car without a judge, you will be disqualified. That's crucial. We want a judge to observe what's going on. Each morning, your judge will do the following. He will open your battery box. Make sure that the connections in your battery box are tight. One of the best ways you can prevent accidents, fires, is make sure your battery and the connection from your battery is tight. That's why we require locking washers on there. And then they'll reseal the battery box each morning. They'll check your communications. They'll check your brake lights. They'll make sure your safety officer has the necessary equipment. And they'll check your vehicle lights for your chasing cars to make sure they're okay. Here's how the race breaks out. Impounds open at 6:30, team meeting at 8, cars line up at 8:45, race start, media stop in the morning or rest stop, lunch stop, maybe an afternoon stop, race ends at 5 o'clock. If you're not there, you trailer, meal at 7, and impounds begin at 9. You can charge your batteries between 6:30 and race start. You can charge your batteries by sun, of course, up until 9 o'clock, and then the car belongs to us. Judges, we seated your primary chase vehicle up in the front row. You're responsible for taking care of that judge. That means that whatever you have for lunch, you need to provide it for the judge too. Now, if you're eating peanut butter and jelly, that's fine. If you're having ramen noodles, that's fine. If you're all having steaks, he needs a steak, she needs a steak. But you take care of them. When you get water, give your judge water. Now, if you arrive on time by 7 o'clock, then you don't have to provide the judge dinner. But if you're late and you miss the dinner, then you have to provide the judge dinner too, because we've already had dinner. So that's sort of an extra incentive to make sure you're there on time. Judges cannot require a team to pull over to use facilities. They can't do that. They need to facilitate when you use the restrooms, not when they need to. So they can't stop the progress of your car. Judges will inform the team if you've incurred a penalty. First thing you ask is how much the penalty is. They won't know. That'll be determined by a panel of judges at night, and you'll find out the next day. That way we provide a continuity of penalties across the board. And in the rules, there's a large section set out towards the end of our rules that talks about here are standard penalties like failure to secure. I love an old bumper sticker in a solar car that said, if you find nuts and bolts on the ground, please know that a solar car has passed this way. Because there's always something falling off a solar car. If you do not secure stuff in your car, you'll get a penalty because it could cause a road hazard. And they don't have to, they'll tell you you've got a penalty, they don't tell you how much, but they'll tell you when it happens so that you don't repeat the penalty again. They don't tell you that you're about to incur a penalty. If you see a judge sitting there going, maybe you want to think about what you're doing. If you think you're doing something questionable, then talk to the judge. Say, well, what do you think about us doing this? Yes, back in the back.
Judges rotate.
Yeah, well, you rotate it each day. You get a new judge each day. And that provides a variety of judging for everybody. People will develop reputations. But you want to make sure that your team liaison has a good working relationship. They won't tell you that you're about to incur a penalty. They won't tell you that you're off the road. If you're on a cross-country race and you go off track, well, your mileage stops there. And as you try to figure out where you are, the judge is not going to say, you're off track. They let you figure it out. And you've got to go back to where you went off track and go from there. And then your mileage starts again. Remember, this is a race where each day there are a certain number of miles that you can accrue. And by the end of the race, after these 7 days of racing, the team that's gotten the most miles wins over those 7 days. If we have teams that have, two teams that have accomplished all the miles, then the team that did it in the shortest amount of time is declared a winner. We found out one thing in our race in New York. We had two teams arrive within half a percentage time with each other. So we declared a tie. Probably nice to know that now, because at the time that was a new decision for us. And that was absolutely the worst decision we had ever made, because we had New York and Mississippi tying. And you would have thought the Civil War was being fought over. It was dramatic. So here's a problem with paparazzi as you're driving. You see you're driving along, you've got your lead car, you've got your chase car, and you've got somebody pulling up alongside of you so they can take a picture. You've got to drive defensively. Notice that this team has a trailer that's open. This is sort of nice, and they're taking it up front so that if they have to stop, the trailer can pull over and the car can get into it, but it's open and the car can continue to charge while they're trailering it. That's really nice. The downside is, during impound, you may find that it rains at night, and if your car's open, if you don't have a tarp over it to protect it. We've had teams actually bring two different trailers just because of that. But this is a charging advantage for teams who have an open trailer. We have this picture in the back of the room. I love it. You've got the car going through town, but it was designed to show you they've got a green light. So the car and the first chase vehicle can go through it together. This is a good picture, too, about how the convoy goes along. Notice, again, the nice space here. So a car coming on could pass here, and move on. Don't allow space here. Keep your car together with your first chase vehicle. One of the reasons why we require a Station 7 is so that we can determine whether your car is aerodynamic enough to pass large trucks. So we're in a downtown community, a big truck passes car. We want to make sure the car is stable. So we'll run a big rider truck by you while we're at the speedway testing to make sure your car doesn't wobble. But what the race is all about is about you visiting with people along the way. You're going to see lots of this. When you're at a stop, you need to take the time and talk with people. This gives you a chance to talk and share your project. You can ask them for donations. You can ask them for involvement. That works. If you want them to go away, ask them for money. I promise you, it will leave quickly. But be good-humored about this. Now, I'll say some more about this when we get into our rules a little bit later on. But we'll be doing extended cross-country information in our January workshop, where I'll actually provide you with a race booklet, the mileage, and locations where you can arrange accommodations, and what the booking rate is. Anybody have any questions so far? And thank you for raising your hand in the back. I appreciate that. About rotating judges. Yes.
When it comes to hotel rooms, do you pick hotels and we just pay the fee when we register, or do we pick them and you pick the cities and we just got to get a hotel in the city?
I provide you information about hotels in each community.
Okay.
It's your choice. But I say that by June 1st, if you make a reservation, you can get a room in this hotel for this amount.
Okay.
By using that
So
block.
we don't have to, it's not everybody staying in the same hotel.
No, there'll be multiple. Because if you've got 400 or 500 people,
Okay.
you know, you're going to be spread out over multiple places. There'll be a place where we'll display and have our impound, but then where people will stay will be in different other locations, which we'll share.
I'm understanding that you're trying to stay consistent, so if you don't make the miles that day, you trail it up and then you get to the town.
Right, absolutely. Our philosophy is we start together and we end together. Because one of the things we share from this is the value of being a community. Now, if you were doing the World Solar Challenge, for instance, you're all separated out. You go to wherever you are at 5 o'clock and you stop. There might be not another team within 50 miles of you. And you camp along the roadside with spiders and snakes, all kinds of things. No, we've done it 3 times. So it's better to be with friends who can be spiders and snakes too. But I promise you, it'll be more fun when you know it.